Good to go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education, Thursday, May 4th. As everyone knows, committees are winding down bit by bit. The Senate and the House are winding down as well. We still periodically will have some business to do, and today we do indeed. We are going to look, if one witness is not going to be able to make it, so if you're looking at your agenda, our 2:30 witness will not be able to make it. So we'll work a little bit on S103. H165. To remind everyone what S103 is, this is an act relating to amending prohibitions against discrimination in the workplace. And it was a Senate bill that we sent the House, and the House has it now. It's in House Education, and they are considering what we all considered a little bit last week around hazing, harassment, and bullying standards of students. And this, as I said last week, when we did not move it forward, we had a divided committee, and that we would take a little bit more testimony, anticipating that the House may add it, and if not, I believe our committee on Senate Economic Development will. I've not spoken with Senator Ron Fitzgerald yet, but may ask us to consider this addition. So, with that, we have Amanda Garces with us, a regular witness, who's the Director of Policy, Education, and Outreach with the Vermont Human Rights Campaign. Great to see Ms. Garces. And Ms. Garces, if you don't mind introducing your two guests to us, and we'll welcome them and have an opportunity to hear from them. Yes, please. Ms. Garces knows the committee room.
Thank you. So I want to thank the committee for having us today. I do have one quick testimony that from a family that they would like me to read it because they're really afraid to testify for fear of repercussions for their students. So I will read that at the end. But I will read. I want to introduce Abdullah and Alex. Both can kind of share a little bit. Maybe we want to start with Alex, who's online.
Okay, great.
Would that be right? Would that be okay? Or is it
Alex, are you good with going first? Great. So Alex, if you would just introduce yourself to the committee, let us know what you want us to know, and we can go from there. We may have some questions. And you are muted. Now you're unmuted, I believe. So thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I recognize one friendly face. Terry Williams also lives in Poultney. So I'm Alex Hilliard. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. And I live in Poultney, Vermont, which is in Rutland County. And I was asked to come and speak with you folks today because of some of my experiences that I've had with my own child. And so I come today as a parent to talk about my experience with really the benefits of having the hazing, harassment, and bullying, and just generally removing these standards, the severe and pervasive standards, how when we do things in a way that is inclusive, it can actually create a lot of closure for families and for parents. So how this relates to my own personal story is back in November, I got a call from my 9-year-old school and was told that well, actually, I guess at this point he was 8 still. It was before his birthday, but they called because he had a racial harassment experience at the elementary school, and one of his classmates came up to him and told him that nobody likes you because of your skin color. So I am biracial. I've only, because I grew up in a time in southeastern Massachusetts where you didn't get to tick multiple boxes, so I've only ever identified as a Black individual. I don't consider myself really biracial, even though I technically am. I just always call myself Black. And I don't try to put that upon my children. I realize living in a rural and conservative area where there are Confederate flags hanging at their grandparents' house, it's really important for me to try to keep my kids safe. And I don't make them, I don't want to say that it's a very pro-Black household because it is inside, but I try to keep my kids safe by not having them have to wear that all the time because I know how that endangers them. And so these are kids that do not talk about their racial identity, and they're lighter than me. If you took a magnifying glass to the class picture that my son's in, I'm sure you couldn't identify who the brown one is, that it clearly came from a place of stigma. And why this is important to me and why I think it's great that the hazing, harassment, and bullying standards exist, and why I think that this severe and pervasive should be dropped is because of the standards that we have now compared to other years ago where I had heard. I lived in Poultney for quite a while now. I moved here in 2008 when I was in college, and many families of other interracial families where students were harassed at school and called things like chocolate milk. And I mean, the standards for how high these families had to work. I mean, I can't tell you how many other BIPOC families have moved out of Poultney, Castleton, and Fairhaven and Rutland County because this is known to be a scary place for BIPOC individuals, and it shouldn't be. And I'm in Rutland County trying to really do a lot of work for racial justice, but like I understand because it's scary and it's hard to have those kinds of experiences in schools with your children. And what this hazing, harassment, and bullying standard was able to do for us was that for once the school had to call us and they had to tell me about what happened. And when I learned about this, the hazing, harassment, and bullying, that they had to start a report and they had to file it. And it created some accountability that the school put something in their newsletter as a commitment to fighting against racism. And I mean, it feels like a really small step towards making it a place that feels less scary. And I think, to remove these standards, which it was pretty clear because of my child's race that he was covered by this. But what about all the cases in which marginalized or students holding marginalized identities don't actually have like such a clear case of it being discrimination or whatever thing? I think that to essentially make the barriers less high for folks to meet to be able to prove how they're being harassed would be really helpful. And I think just generally doing this will make it not just better for children and make it a less hostile environment for learning, but I think the same can be extended for parents in their workplaces. So that's why I come today to speak on behalf of that and to hope that you folks will consider ensuring that there is continued accountability for students, that students don't have to, cross such high bars. Like, it was a big win for our family, and we got to have some justice that other BIPOC families don't get to have. And I would like to continue to see that happening for families. Thank you so much.
Alex, I'm not sure if this is a question for you or Ms. Garces, but did the school that Alex's child attend, had they removed the severe? They had not. So this was a situation that rose to the severe and pervasive.
Because of the racial component was what made it easy for us to be able to prove it. But that's where I bang the question that for those folks that it's not easy because they don't fit into these very clear defined categories, removing the severe and pervasive can ensure that other students get to have accountability as well.
Yes. Any questions for Alex? Okay. Alex, feel free to stick around. If you have time, we'd love to have you continue the conversation if we have any other additional questions.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to go?
Yes, thank you very much. Can I record myself, please?
I'm sorry?
I would like to record myself.
Oh, sure.
Yes, so
Yeah,
I can
yeah, oh, yeah,
share it
absolutely.
with my
Yeah.
wife.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Abdullah Nyan, and I live in Berlin, Vermont. And I am a parent of 3 kids. I am asking the legislator to ensure that students are included in S-103, a bill that would allow harassment to be reported before it becomes severe and pervasive in housing, employment, and public places. There is an effort by education leaders to exclude students from this bill, so that school employees, include teachers, would not have to prove the harassment was severe or persons before reporting it. But students would have to continue to endure harassment until such a time as become severe or pervasive. To make no this makes no sense and harmful for our children. If we are going to correct the harassment standards for adults in employment and housing and adults who work at school, then should we correct it for students too? And now I would like to talk about like what happened to my kids. It happened like at least 3 times, and it never was reported until we discovered by a neighbor's kid who tell it to us, and then we mentioned it to the school, and after I discovered that there's like a process called like HHB. It's how I know what HHB was. That's supposed to be like all the steps to documenting and reporting it to parents, which was not done that proper way. But I also want to make sure everybody here knows that I am doing this because I want to open a line of communication between me and the school and the administration, so we talk and not be like in a confrontational situation. So we set up a table. We start talking about like with teachers and librarian and the principal and even get the superintendent included. It's working, but I feel like there's like more that needs to be done because my kid keep suffering that situation, and it's really bad. I would like everybody here to just put himself in my place and understand what I am enduring as a dad, me and my wife and my youngest kids. And I really want something to be done. I was telling to Amanda that I am Muslim. I pray, and I will pray the hardest I can pray to get this bill passed because something needs to be done. That is roughly like how I would like to describe what happened to me, because there's more, but I don't want to make it like too long. And when I have shared my story with other people of color like me, the recommendation is like to leave, and
to leave.
To leave Vermont. To go live like where like other big Senegalese community are, like New York, like Montreal and stuff. But I'm not gonna leave because we did so much over here. I have a farm now. I myself been like through harassment, but I'm not here for myself. I can take care of myself, but at least I want my child to grow. Like when my son is like 25 years old and ask me that, what did you concretely do to help me? I want to just make him listen to this video, for example, this audio, and tell him, hey, I tried. This is what it was a system that was bigger than me, but at least I stepped up with a shaky voice, but I tried to do something. And I just wish like it's gonna work out. And I'm not gonna move away from Vermont because I feel like this is home. I feel good over here. My family feels good. I built up a farm. I'm at my second year, and I'm not, I'm gonna stay and fight. And yeah, I will pray. I will do whatever it takes. I'm really bad at talking in public, but I'd rather come here.
I would disagree with you.
Talking with a shaky voice than just shutting up and not doing nothing for my kids.
Thank you. Senator Williams.
Thank you both for your testimony. We don't want you to leave. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, question for AOE: did you when something like this happens at the school level, is it reported to AOE?
In the Agency of Education, in certain circumstances, it is. If you actually go to the House Education page, they received testimony from 2 AOE folks this morning, and the reporting form and process is posted. Both of those documents are posted. I can look at them now and give you more concrete answer, but.
Because I live in Poultney, where Alex is from, and I was on the select board in the town, and I don't remember hearing about that instance. So if it's something that's happening within the school board, and I don't always get involved in the school, I do now, but if it's happening, it definitely should get reported up the chain.
My understanding is that typically these situations are attempted to be resolved in the school first, and then if they're not, then they would rise to AOE reporting.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, of course.
Thank you for that. So a follow-up question to Senator Williams' question is, do you feel as though the AOE has the capacity when a school is clearly failing a student and a family, which is what we're hearing about today? Do you feel that the AOE has the capacity to go into that school and help resolve this situation and help the student, help the family, and help the school get better?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak specifically to staffing capacity just because the landscape is still relatively new, but I know anecdotally hearing from my colleague Emily Simmons, she said most of the time there's 3 ways that we can approach these situations, and most usually they are resolved through the mediation process. And it typically doesn't rise to kind of like a change. Get in touch with them, figure out if you're asking capacity, you mean like staffing capacity? Or just
staffing capacity as well as just like knowledge and understanding and, you know, ability to engage in these crisis situations that should be happening, because it seems as though the agency of education, you know, this is sort of it's one of your jobs, right? Is to make sure our schools are functioning at a high level and doing the work that they should be doing. So, I mean, maybe that's a discussion that we can have next session in this committee, but it just seems problematic to me that this is happening. Yeah.
That's a good point. In data collection for us to know in the future how many of these complaints are reaching all of you and what the criteria is for them to reach all of you. Everything we can work on the schools, all that would be helpful. If you could just pull that up, no rush, toward the session to help us to understand that would help. Sarah, thank you very much. I have good news for you and your wife. You're actually being recorded. So you, so you have the audio and you'll have the video this evening, and we're grateful that you're here. Amanda Garces, testimony from the family, and the family must remain anonymous.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm gonna read what the mother wrote, and then I'm gonna end with a commentary. I am a Mexican woman with 2 children who were born in the U.S. I was 10 years old when I crossed the border to go to Texas. I came to Texas in 1992 as an undocumented immigrant with my mom and my brother. My father was in Texas waiting for us. Coming to this country was really hard. As a 10-year-old child, I didn't understand anything about crossing to this country. We lived in Texas for 2 years. My father decided to move to a different state called Vermont. As documented, and I was often told to be careful around the police because they could take me and separate me from my family. And we moved to Vermont. We ended up at a farm and we lived in a camper for a few months. It was very cold, and everything in Vermont was so far away that we weren't able to go to the grocery store as often. There were times where we suffered hunger. I was able to speak to the owner of the farm and ask him if he could pay my father on time and if he could take us to the grocery store. I was the only one who spoke and understood very little English, and I often had to help my parents translate. I was able to communicate and asking my brother and I could go to school. Back then, it seemed like it was a little bit easier. The school was made aware that we were here undocumented, but that didn't stop the racism that my brother and I went through in school. I didn't understand English that well, so I was put in a separate classroom that wasn't part of my class. The teachers always mispronounced my name and acted like they couldn't hear me, or they would even speak louder so I would understand. As I walked into the classrooms, the student would start whispering and calling me racist slurs towards me by certain students. I tried to report it, but then they treated me like I was being too sensitive about it. I always felt unwelcome at that school. I got to the point where the bullying and racism got so bad that I ended up leaving and ended up being homeschooled. My parents didn't have the opportunity to homeschool me, so I had to do everything on my own. As I grew up and became an adult, I still have racism at work, and it became the point that I said, I get this all the time, and questioned myself not being too sensitive about this. The first time I became a US citizen, I said, I'm an American now, and I'm not going to be suffering racism, but I was wrong. I'm a mother of 3 children, and they go to Vermont schools. All of my 3 children have experienced racism. My oldest child was in front of someone that yelled out, I'm gonna shot all Mexicans. Another time, in a classroom, it was said, I am going to take a slingshot. Sorry.
Okay.
And shot and send you back to the border. When Trump was elected, friends and things got worse for our family because we were looked at as a bad people. And we only come here to work. I try to report all the bullying and racism, and it seems like all they do is talk about it and nothing is done. So I urge you, we're not making this up. This is happening all over the state, and we cannot stay still. I know people want to do the right thing. I know teachers are doing the right thing. I know we have a long way to go. But this will change some things for some families that are not getting what they need. And I urge you to take this as a way to touch your heart and say, we can't stand aside thinking to give time. So to the administrators to do, because we can work together. So I just want to respectfully remind the committee that in the House, the NEA, the Vermont Insurance Trust, I agree that severe provisions should be corrected. They said it in testimony. Even the VSBA and AOE did not oppose the bill, but they said, let's wait, right? Compromise that seems reasonable is to give the schools an effective date so that stakeholders can come next year. So I urge you to pass it. Give it time for us to support in making the concessions about the resources that are needed, but we should not wait. We should not leave the students behind from the civil rights that they deserve.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Garces? This is very helpful. We recognize a couple of things. I want to echo what Senator Williams said. We don't want anybody to leave. We want everyone to feel safe. We also recognize it's not easy to come before a committee in the legislature and share such incredibly personal and serious issues. So I just want to thank everybody for that as well. It means more to us than perhaps you realize. So what we will continue to do is hopefully we'll get to some consensus in the next day or so, or today, and see what we can get there and have this conversation. But we also know you're all available to help us, and that's all. Please, Senator Field.
I want to ask the question of Mrs. Garces and maybe even the whole Human Rights Commission, which is that whatever happens with this bill, is there a way for us to partner in the future? Because sadly, I don't think this bill is going to eradicate racism and all of the other micro and macro aggressions that folks are experiencing in our society, in our community, and in our schools. So regardless of what happens to this, is there a way we can partner moving forward to put some structures in place statewide in our schools that will teach tolerance, that will put put in some, and I can, I can talk to you all about some of the things that we're doing in my school district in Burlington, but I want all of the schools in the state to be doing this work, not just some of the schools, all of the schools. And I hope that we can work together to do this work, because it sounds to me as though this is a severe and pervasive problem across the state that needs a big structural overhaul. And litigating it again, whatever happens with this, isn't going to solve the problem. So we have to start from day one with education, with training, with everything. And I just want to commit to you personally that I'm ready to dig into this work and to do whatever it takes to change the landscape in our state. And I hope that you're willing to help.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. So this is more of a comment, but this is how we partner with the Human Rights Commission, and this is how we partner with the Office of Racial Equity. This is one of the things that they're doing and presenting to us as something that we can do to make change for our students. So I mean, this is part of the answer in terms of what we can do, and I don't think that this is going to eradicate racism, but this is a step that we can take to make sure that administrations and schools are being held accountable when they're not addressing racism that's happening in their hallways and classrooms.
Thank you. And I just want to respond that this is one of the many things that we are doing as a commission, right? I chair the Act One working group that has been building and thinking through this around all of these issues. And this is why we have the EQS. This is why we're working on the ethnic studies framework that is going to give life. This is why we sit in the Bullying and Harassment Council, who have been pushing to the inactive and to give teeth to that council. And so I've made recommendations to that council to change some of these things, including having more staff dedicated just to this at the AOE level, including independent investigators that can support bullying cases that don't have nowhere to go but the school district. There's like 5 recommendations that we made as a subcommittee, as far as who's included in that subcommittee, but the council as a whole hasn't done much and has been struggling with this. And now we have Susanna Davis coming to facilitate conversations for that council. We have been doing that now for a few months now. We're gonna be meeting every 3 weeks rather than every 3 months. And so like we've been pushing for that, but that's not enough, right? Because who's at the table, what we need is these stories. What we need is the stories to say, this is where the system's broken, because we can't fix the system by the same people that are not seeing the holes in the system. So unless we have parents and impacted students saying, this is what happened to me, this is what you need to change. I'm gonna give you an example. My daughter, in the classroom, some things were happening. The teacher made it a point to have these conversations with them, to do a culture survey where they're looking at like, do all the students feel safe? I'm gonna be working with this teacher to do a training with this 4th grade class, but that shouldn't be isolated. That should be like, something's happening, we're gonna do something. And great teachers are doing great work, great teachers are scared, great teachers, so we have a whole system, but the system that we have, we can't fix it the way it is working because it's the same people that are in there. So unless we have the lived experience that can be shared to say, this is what you need to fix, these are the resources that this needs, we're not gonna go anywhere. So being proactive in a lot of other pieces, but this is a big hole. And this is a good first step.
And I wanted to just add, like, as steps to fight racism in general, I'm trying to get together, like, my kids' therapist, the superintendent in the school where I have like an assembly with kids, teachers, everybody getting together in one place, talking about making sure like some people get a little bit uncomfortable, like getting them out of their comfort zone so we can talk with. I'm not saying that that is gonna be enough to eradicate the whole problem, but at least one moment of silence acknowledge that this will exist and need to be erased. So I'm working with my therapist, and maybe this year is not gonna happen, but next year, whoever wants to join that group is welcome.
Senator.
Yeah, just the only other thing I would add is all of your efforts sound amazing. They seem to be a little bit top down, and I guess as we're looking at this systemically across the state, I would like to see a lot more student focused work. So thank you, Mr. Dion's point, that work that's community, that's student focused, that's teacher focused. Until you get the students with their own voices, their own experiences engaging in the work, we're not going to see the change that we want to see. And again, all of these efforts are incredible, but we need to be looking at curriculum. We need to be looking at what kind of voice and what kind of actions the students are taking on the ground in their schools to make things better. That's, from my perspective, that's the only way I see change happening, true systemic change.
You need both, right?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
Act One has community members, Act One is half community members who are parents, who are teachers, who have kids in the system. We have students. So I think that is an example of making something change, and it's top down in the way that is local control. So then, like, school board, like it's a system piece, right? Like everybody has a thing. What I'm saying is, for example, when you create a policy at a school district level, and when you don't have the students who are saying this is what's not working on it, then, like, of course you're not gonna have change. You need both. The system cannot have either top or bottom. You have to come in the middle. So
I agree.
I think that I work. So I think another piece is that we have our members of the Blue Side School Coalition, which came to you with S138, and that group has also been looking at HHB as far as we had a lot of parents. There have been conversations around creating a storytelling piece where, because the data is not sufficient. So, like, you'll never hear all the cases that have been settled because that doesn't go anywhere. That stays in the school. So settlement cases that have been settled in a school district by the attorneys are not reported. So in the state database. So, like, you'll never hear the real numbers of that.
That's what my point is, that the solution is at the grassroots, and it's going to take generations because the kids aren't learning it at school, they're learning it somewhere else. So, but it's like any other major problem, it's got to get fixed from the top down. So I'm interested to know, I know what you're doing, but what's the policy of the AOE, and how do we get, some advertisement, commercials? Is there funding available or something like that? And what define prejudice and harassing and bullying? I really like to see a lot of that out in the public, because unfortunately, a lot of people that don't understand it. They just know that that's prevalent.
Ms. Garces, I should just ask them directly, but it sounded to me like the NEA had changed their position from when they were in here to what they said in the House. They speak, there's a group, the Equity Council, and it sounds like maybe you said something that they may have taken.
They testify that it was okay to change, that they were looking for more resources. I can send that testimony is on the House website. And that they believe a lot of the need is around resources too. And in that testimony, it mentions some of the work that our commission did a few years ago, where one of the investigators was doing a lot of training around school buses, around prejudice, and that training had stopped. And I think I testified last time that
Yeah, you're still the witness, yeah. You're good.
that we had been waiting for this new AOE document, so that, because I have, like, that's the whole goal, is that I'm gonna start some training mostly for parents and students, and like in collaboration with a lot of the grassroots organizations around the state, to actually have some trainings that have plain language, that is more popular education. But until the policy is rewritten, like, I'm like frozen there, but that, it's like work that our commission is going to be doing, and I don't want to do that whole work.
Any other questions? And Alex, are you still with us? No, okay. Again, thanks very much. We are going to take a 10-minute break because we've got to wait for Ledge Council to arrive and Ms. Horton. So if anybody has any follow-up, we can follow up with you one-on-one now. Thank you all. Great to see you.
I'm sorry for what you